Welcome to Consulting Mastery, where we help B2B consultants master the business of consulting. I'm Carrie.
And I'm Ahmed. Join us as we explore the art of delivering outstanding client value, earning a higher income, and thriving in today's marketplace.
So I want to talk today about how you make the shift from a corporate mindset to an entrepreneurial mindset and what that looks like.
Why is that important for people?
Well, what's interesting is that I think we don't realize how really entrenched we get into the corporate world, right? And the cadence that goes with that, and the bureaucracy that goes with that, and the red tape and the approvals and all of the things. And what I find, and I think, you and I both experience this as well, is when you leave that environment, you're so excited because you have all this freedom. You can do things any way that you desire, and you've got big dreams. But what often holds people back and what often is a struggle is the fact that that has now become so ingrained that it's really hard to step outside. And stepping outside is the thing that allows you to move quickly, that allows you to, fail fast, that allows you to just try things in a way that you couldn't have in that corporate space.
You have way more expertise here than I do. I'm going to be keen to hear your take on this because your time in corporate was much longer than mine. I did a little stint at Ernst & Young, I don't know, 3-4 years probably. And yeah, Ernst & Young was the epitome of a, corporate bureaucracy. Very well structured, very efficient, very rigid. And it worked because they run a factory over there, as do most big corporations. And I died inside every day, a little bit more every day until I finally left. And then I went into a startup, entrepreneurial environment and thrived. And so I almost feel like I didn't have to do a lot of reconditioning because I didn't let corporate condition me very well. I still remember when I was talking to some of my superiors about leaving, and they were like, yeah, no one's surprised, right? Like everybody likes you and you do well, but everybody can kind of tell, like, it's not your jam. Like you're not gonna rise the ladder here. Doesn't seem to be your shtick, your personality. So I feel like I kind of resisted all the corporate structure when I was there and didn't let it condition me. So I didn't have a lot of unlearning to do, so to speak. Your story is almost the opposite, is it not?
It is. I'm curious though, how many PowerPoints do you think you created in 4 years?
One per day? I don't know, like a lot.
I know.
A lot.
Yes. I also worked in a world where that was the only way to communicate, right? And it's those little things, right, that are kind of fascinating because you start to just see them as normal, right? It is normal that something is going to take 6 weeks that now we can make a decision on in a day. It's normal that I have to create some, big justification for everything I do. It's normal that I need to look in some document to see how to do every little thing that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And it's insidious, right?
I got a bunch of rants here. If you want some rants, right?
Go for it.
Rants always make for good podcast content, right? Okay, so we obviously enroll small businesses by and large, right? Most of our clients are, under $1 million and, pretty much all of them under 5 million. So it's just small businesses, like very small businesses. And we're always talking to a founder, a consultant who runs the business. And the objections that we get are hilarious. Okay. I need to talk to my business partner. Who's that? My spouse. Okay. Yes. All right. You mean your spouse that has absolutely nothing to do with the running of your business? That's okay. All right. Go talk to business. I need to restructure my operation. We hear this from people with no clients. I need to restructure my operation. I need to talk to my accountant. The number of excuses, and people inherit these excuses from corporate because corporate decision making is slow and painful. It is decision by committee. And they come out of these corporate environments where every decision is a meeting or a series of meetings. right? Every decision requires, you know, ungodly amounts of documentation, right? And reports and business cases and graphs and figures. And so you get into, I guess I'm stepping on your point here, right? You get into an entrepreneurial environment and you think you've got to have this massive rationalization and justification for every little decision. And before you know it, you're out of business because you took too long to decide. Is that too
Well,
dramatic?
no, I think it's bang on. And I would say it's that, but it's also this feeling that I need to build a business around me before I can actually do anything or sell anything, right? This is the, well, I need to, before I can even talk to anyone, I need to have a logo, I need to have a website, I need to have, you know, people that I want to hire to work with me, I need to have this and that and the other thing. And the reality is none of those things matter until you actually get rolling. And quite frankly, it's often too early to do a lot of that, because if you haven't worked with enough people and understood what it is that they want and what it is that's going to speak to them, you're wasting your time and you're wasting your energy. And
I,
so I think, oh, sorry.
well, I think the example that came up in our earlier conversation today with a client is
Yeah.
a great example where we had a client and she wanted to launch a new offer to an audience that she knows very well, that she has audience with. They're already in her network, in a space that she's very intimate with. And she said, she made the offhanded comment like, "Oh yeah, it'll probably take about 45 days for me to get ready to go to that market." And I challenged her. We challenged her and we said, "No, it should take you 30 days to close a deal. You can go to the market today, tomorrow, because they already have them in your network. You can line up meetings, you can make them offers, and you can close them in 30 days." And it was, and she made the comment, I think she was the inspiration behind this episode, that she's so stuck in corporate timelines, you know, in a corporate world, nothing can reasonably get done in less than 45 days or 60 days. Like no new initiative, for good reason, right? Because you've got more people, right? More moving parts, more processes to consider, more change to manage. Like there's a reason why things take longer. Most of those reasons no longer apply to you if you're a small firm or a solo.
Yeah, absolutely. And what that means is that often, I like to think that we give a good advice and, we have a lot of good information for people. But I think one of the biggest advantages that people that work with us have is that we kind of yank them along, right? Like we don't mess around with this. Let's just wait and think and, make a PowerPoint and create another mind map and, all of the things that people want to do that, often are this corporate baggage. Also, sometimes it's just hiding in the work. And, we've talked about that before as well. But, the notion of finding someone, whatever that looks like, who has you question the rut that you're walking in, I think is something that entrepreneurs don't consider, but really, really need to, because left to your own devices, if you're someone who did come out of a corporate background, you are, almost guaranteed to fall into that trap.
I mean, I would venture to say that everybody leaving corporate and going off on their own needs to have some kind of a business coach. And that can come in many different forms, but somebody in your corner, whether that's a one-on-one coach or through a program like the one that we deliver, 90-day pipeline, somebody or some group of people in your corner who have experience in business and know what kind of decision making process it requires, know the rules of the game, know how fast you need to move, and are adept at helping you, recondition some of those corporate behaviors.
Yeah, for sure. And that could also come, you mentioned the word group, and it just brings to mind, it can also come in the form of a community, right? Like the notion of just making sure that there are people that you're connecting with on a regular basis, because this is the other challenge. If you're someone who came from a corporate space, those are the people you spend all your days with as well, right? And you may have some entrepreneurial friends or contacts, but the chance of you being with them on a regular basis and being, kind of impacted by the way they function is probably reasonably low. And so absolutely, like the coaching, the sort of formalized, have someone on your side who has that expertise and that experience. But I would also say really important to get yourself connected with other people that are doing something similar, or have done something similar on that path.
Especially if you don't have a lot of entrepreneurs in your family or your close social circle. If you don't have a lot of friends or family that are entrepreneurs, which, by definition, you're probably not going to have that many, right? Unless you come from a very entrepreneurial family where everybody's entrepreneurs, and that happens. It's rare. But for the most part, your social circles, your friends, your family are going to be just regular people, right? Who just, work regular jobs in corporate, most likely. And yeah, to your point, like if you can't, I feel like we understate how abnormal entrepreneurial behavior is. It's not normal. It's not easy. You weren't taught to behave this way or make decisions this quickly. You weren't taught to act this quickly. You weren't taught the mindset. You weren't socialized into it in school, certainly, and probably not also in your corporate working environment, and probably not by your parents, again, unless they were entrepreneurs. So, you can't just flip a switch and expect things to change overnight. So to your point about like surrounding yourself with other entrepreneurs who think entrepreneurially, and I think there's entrepreneurs and then there's entrepreneurial thinking. And they're two different things, right? Because you have people inside organizations that are very entrepreneurial and find ways to thrive, right? Even in big corporations. So I think this is less about, surrounding yourself with entrepreneurs and more about surrounding yourself with people who think entrepreneurially. I want to get that right. It's a long word.
It's a rough one. Well, and the other reality is, even if you could flip a switch, the requirements of the entrepreneur absolutely changes over time. And so it makes it really, really difficult to nail down, like, what does that look like for me today? So you're just starting your business, you're a solopreneur, you're doing your thing. Um, you can move quickly, you can try things. There's a bunch of stuff that can happen that further down the line, when you're making $5 million a year and you've hired people and, you're responsible for others' well-being and, you have commitments and all of those things, the core of being an entrepreneur doesn't change, but how that shows up in the world does change. And so it's not, and we said at the beginning, we talked about the difference between corporate thinking and entrepreneurial thinking, but I would say it's not as black and white as that, because the entrepreneur really is required to evolve over time. Yes, that is true in corporate as well, but there are many more kind of guidelines and guardrails and things to point you in the direction. As an entrepreneur, you need to really map that out for yourself. And it's an ongoing exercise.
The other thing I think it's important to mention here is that speed and agility are incredible advantages that come with being an entrepreneur and that are more significant for you earlier on in your journey. And this is why, carrying forward corporate thinking and stretching out timelines is a terrible idea, because you're eroding your advantage. Your advantage when you're a solo and you're small is that you can turn on a dime. We see this happen in our program. Folks want to go into, they enroll with us and they say, I want to go into market X. And we go do some work in market X and we invalidate that direction. It's not the way to go. And a week later, 2 weeks later, they're in market Z. I'm thinking about a client whose name I won't mention, but she spent, I think it was at least a year pursuing a market. She had an offer in a market she wanted to pursue. And when she joined 90 Day Pipeline, she said to us, I want to really make it. I have been struggling in this market. I can't make it work. I want to validate or invalidate this market once and for all. I want to go all in on it. One last hurrah. And if we can't make it work, then I'll pivot. She spent 60 days in that market, couldn't make it work. She pivoted. 30 days later, had clients in a completely different market that she had never entered before. She turned on a dime and she has a business now as a result, whereas she didn't really have much of one before. That's your advantage when you're small. And it erodes as you grow. Like, Carrie, you know this. I still sometimes act like I'm a solo. Like, I just want to do things, right? Let's launch this thing and let's do that thing. And I have like this long list of initiatives, which When it was just me and I could turn on a dime and the team wasn't affected and the operation wasn't affected, maybe that was fine. It's probably still not a great idea, but I could have done it in many cases. I can't do that anymore. So even at our level, we're certainly no corporate behemoth. We have less of an ability to be agile and fast than we used to. And so when you have that ability, use it. Don't squander it. It's an advantage.
Absolutely. And I think, we're talking about speed, but I would put forward that I think what we're really talking about is risk mitigation, right? All of those things are in place in a corporate environment because they're trying to minimize risk. And often they're talking about like multi-million, billion-dollar projects and, again, really good reasons why this exists. But what we're talking about is how you look at risk, right? So the notion of it's okay to take a risk for like 3 weeks and figure out if this is a market that is going to work out for me or not. That's a thing that you can do. And speed is part of it, but it's also just the fact that, you don't need to worry about all those other things. And so I think just getting really clear about how you approach risk and what that means in your business allows you to then, move quickly and find the pot of gold that you're looking for as effectively as you can.
And again, in a larger corporate environment, risk mitigation is typically the focus because there's a lot at stake. There's a lot of moving parts. We obviously train people to sell into corporate. And the biggest challenge in selling into corporate is change management. That's the challenge. Right? When you sell into corporate, you implement a new program initiative. It means change. It means something else is affected. It means something breaks. It means you're replacing some other process. And the thing that, prospects in a corporate setting have the most trouble with is managing the change that comes with buying or engaging in some new initiative. Rightfully so, right? Because that can be very disruptive. You don't have as many pieces to manage, obviously, if you're smaller. Therefore, your decision-making processes and your aversion to change should be less significant.
Yeah, and the other thing that came up as you were talking about that is probably worth recognizing if you're coming from corporate is you also spend a lot of time on reputation management. And, doing all the behind the scenes stuff to get the people on your side so that your initiative, is successful and all of the things to position yourself in a certain way. And when you're on your own, I mean, the only person you're trying to impress is yourself. But I think we carry that forward. And this creates some of the fear around what are people going to think? How are they going to, perceive me? What's this going to look like? What does it mean if I happen to fail, whether it's a small F fail or a big F fail?
I'd never made that connection until you just said it. Yeah, that's really interesting because, yeah, 100%. In corporate, it's about what do people think of you? It's not about, I mean, it depends on the setting and the role, right? But it's often about results, but with a really heavy dose of how are you perceived by the important people that matter. And if you know how to play the game well and, butter up the people that matter, which I
Be
was
pretty
really good.
mediocre and still do just
I
fine.
was really good at that, by the way. I was your classic, like, do the bare minimum because I didn't enjoy the work I was doing, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a slacker by nature, but in that role, I would do the bare minimum, but I just knew how to get on my manager's good side.
Yeah.
Right. I got one of the highest ratings at my level in one particular year. And there it was unjustified. It should not have happened. And then one of my other managers told me that my direct manager who got the rating for me, he's like, did you pay him to go to battle? He fought for that rating, right? Because yeah, the truth is a lot of it is just like getting the right people to support you and be on your side. Which again, like at the end of the day, as an entrepreneur, you're gonna win or lose by your revenue.
Yeah.
Right. And by the tangible results. And I think that's the big shift is if in corporate it was, there's some results and there's some politics. In entrepreneurship, it's all results. Yeah, there's maybe politics a little bit later on, right? But in the beginning, it's just results, results, results. That's the only thing you can really afford to care about is results.
Absolutely. So we talked about, why people carry this with them and why it's important to shed the corporate skin. Let's talk about how for a quick minute.
I have no idea. What did you do?
What did I do? Honestly, transitioned far too slowly. I mean, I'm speaking of this because I lived it, right? So did I sit quietly in a room and try to build the trappings of an organization around me before I even went out to try to find a client? Absolutely. So first of all, wasted some time. Happy to admit that here in front of everybody. Um, and then for me, it was about realizing, I think as many of the folks that we work with do, that I needed someone outside of me, outside of my head, to propel me forward, because it became very clear that I was not going to do that, on my own at the pace that I needed to meet the goals that I had.
Was that me?
It was eventually you, yes. Yes. I might have made a false start or two before, but then
That's
you
okay.
you appeared in my co-working space and here we are.
That's okay. Yeah, I think for me, I mean, if I think back now, even when I was in corporate, I had the bug even back then. I kind of knew eventually I would be doing my own thing.
Mhm.
And so I was listening to the podcasts, I was reading the books, I was engaged in the material. I was starting to develop the entrepreneurial mindset even while still in corporate, which probably made my time there even more unmanageable. So that by the time I went out, I had arguably already acquired some of those mindsets, but certainly still had to surround myself with the right people. So community, coaching programs and community were big for me. Coaching programs gave me a very clear, methodical approach to follow, and coaching and mentorship from people that have been down the path who were entrepreneurs who I could learn from. It also gave me communities of people who were doing similar things and thought similar ways, both online and kind of in-person experiences in my earlier days were instrumental in evolving that mindset.
Yeah. And when I hear you talk, it makes me realize something about my journey as well versus yours, is that you wanted to go down this path, right? So you started to do things, as you were just saying. The path that I walked down, and I think, the person we were talking to today is walking down, is not even really realizing that you need to have a shift in the way you think until, you know, many, many weeks, months, sometimes years along the path. And so I guess like anything, right? The first step is recognizing that you have a problem or that you need to do something differently. And it's all about recognizing, okay, what are the strengths that I'm bringing from my previous life? Because we also don't want to discount those, right? All of the things that you're bringing forward, even including some of these things that we're saying are not ideal in this moment, are all making up your unique skill set. They're going to serve you well. The real trick though is looking at that and thinking about, which of these things are valuable and what else do I need to layer on top.